Hello and welcome to Elena Meets the Author. This podcast explores how authors create a world that we can escape into. Join me as we demystify the magic that keeps us turning the page. Hi there. It's so good to have you.
Hi.
I absolutely loved this book. And I know I seem to often love the books I recommend, but I really love this one. I can't recommend it highly enough. It is so, and I guess this word is also overused, it's very quirky. Even though it's dark and it's light and all that stuff, but it's also really, really original, which is what I mean by quirky. You get the darkness of life right next to the lightness, the macabre next to the practical. You start your novel with the quote from Virginia Woolf's Mrs. Dalloway. It was awful, he cried, awful, awful. Still, the sun was hot. Still, one got over things. Still, life had a way of adding day to day. And that is so true that one could be miserable one day, think you'll never be happy again, and then little by little you surprise yourself and you do experience happiness. How did the character Phoebe, who starts the book in utter despair, come to you?
Yeah, she came to me a while ago, probably, I don't know exactly how many years, 6, 7, 8 years ago. I was in the middle of working on my second novel, Notes on Your Sudden Disappearance. And I really needed a break from that book. I thought it was getting a little heavy, a little dark. I was writing about death at the time, one of the characters dying. So I was like, you know what? Why am I doing this to myself? Why don't I write a fun book, a breezy book, a woman going on vacation, going to this very luxurious hotel. I didn't really know why she was going there. I just knew I wanted that to be the setting. And I thought it would be really fun if there was a wedding set there. I love weddings. I used to work at weddings. That's how I know I love them. I still enjoyed them even as a worker. And as I was writing that opening scene, and the bride character, Lila, she keeps asking Phoebe, 'cause the bride is obsessed with the fact that, everyone at this hotel is supposed to be there for the wedding. And she knows Phoebe is not there for the wedding. So she keeps asking, why are you there? Why are you there? And I really didn't know. I mean, I knew nothing about Phoebe other than she didn't have luggage. She was just sort of waltzing in here on a whim. I tried out a few possibilities, like really kind of going through different types of novels I could write. Like she's here to have an affair, or she's here like as an assassin, or there's a murder mystery, and I ended up writing, I'm here to end my life. And that really surprised me and disappointed me at the time, because I was like, oh, she's sad. She's a very sad woman walking into this hotel. And that's at odds with the happiness that the bride demands. Right. That's why I knew it was the story. Like, I was like, that's the right story. Because what is more opposed to like a happy wedding than a woman who thinks she's at the end of her life? But I didn't want to write that. I was like, no, this is supposed to be my fun book. And so I put it away for a couple of years. But I still thought about Phoebe.
One thing, I haven't read your second book, Notes on a Disappearance, but I heard you in an interview say that is that, I don't know if it's fiction, but it
is, yeah. Yeah, that's a fictional novel. It's, you might be thinking of the fact that it was inspired by the loss of my own brother when I was a teenager, when we were both teenagers. I knew I wanted to write about that at some point in my life. I mean, it was such a dominant experience of my life. But I tried writing it as a memoir, but it just wasn't for me. I really needed some distance from that story in order to turn that grief and my experiences to turn that into an actual story.
But it just strikes me as kind of macabrely funny, if that's the right way, that when you took a break from that book and you start this book, she says she wants to kill herself. So even though you're trying to be light, find something light, the death still comes through.
I know. Nobody was more disappointed than I was. I was like, I really thought after writing Notes on Your Sudden Disappearance, it's like, it's going to be a whole new world for me. I got that out of my system. I can move on. But no. And, and I ended up, I put it away for a few years because I was scared of it and tired of it, which was good because when I returned, I saw it in a much lighter way, or at least I was able to see the comedy that the situation created. Like, not that it's funny that she's sad, of course, but just that sometimes when our despair is in the face of someone else's total indifference or obliviousness, like that can either be a tragedy or that can be hilarious. And
definitely. Yeah. I mean, the juxtaposition of those two characters is great. This is a novel that captures the reader from the start. No patience required. Phoebe has come to a gorgeous hotel in Newport, Rhode Island that she can barely afford with no luggage, wearing an emerald silk dress and gold heels that hurt and the thick pearls that her husband, who has left her, gave her on their wedding night. So a very mysterious and sad start. And then Phoebe is confronted with the wedding people, this happy bunch of strangers who are also staying at this same hotel for what's supposed to be a very happy occasion. Right away, I'm intrigued. We have friends of the bride in the line to check in with Phoebe named High Bun and Neck Pillow. Phoebe eavesdrops on their funny chat. When you were writing this book, did you start with that first chapter or did you think of that first chapter later and have the elevator scene maybe be the first thing you started with when you first conceived of the book?
I did start with that scene. I mean, I started with Phoebe arriving at the hotel and then worked my way into that elevator scene. And so I would say it really started with kind of the whole first chapter. And of course there were edits made along the way. But it, from start to finish, that first chapter looks about the same as in terms of plot points as when I started.
Yeah.
And because to me, I didn't really know what I was doing until she was in that elevator with the bride. And the bride responded the way she did. After Phoebe says, "I'm here to end my life," the bride says, "No, it's my wedding week and you can't do that." And to me, when I came back to the novel after abandoning it for a few years, I realized that that was actually my voice. People always think I'm Phoebe, like you were kind of gesturing at earlier, right? Yeah. And there are obviously a lot of overlaps there, but to me, in some ways, I'm also Lila, right? I'm like that self-policing of sadness, saying you can't be sad now, or you can't write a sad book. Not that I think this is a sad book, but I was afraid, oh, here I go again, writing about something too dark. And I was like, that's exactly what the bride would say. And I don't want to listen to the bride. Like, I want Phoebe to feel her feelings and I want her to say what she wants to say. So that really actually freed me up to write the rest of the book. So
you felt part of both of them, Phoebe and Lila.
I did. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in the way that, they're also other people too. They're drawn from character, from people that I've seen multiple times throughout my life, right? Like a type of person.
Yeah.
But I think also what people say, about dreams, right? Like that everyone in your dreams is really you, right? Because it's coming from your imagination. It's some part of you. I think that is true of my relationship to my fictional characters, right? Like Lila, the seed that was Lila, when I was just starting her character was this person who would go around saying, in this room, you have to be happy. In this space, we're going to feel like this, right? This commanding tone that was really set on telling everyone how to feel and also herself, right?
Got it. Makes sense. Well, I was going to say, I should add that there'll be major spoiler alerts, but we've already done it. And also that first spoiler is only on page 14, comes very early. Phoebe's desires. So she's come to the hotel to kill herself, and somehow her grief frees her to be truly honest, because for the first time in her life, she doesn't care what people think of her. She doesn't need to be liked. In a way that seems like an upside to grief. No more pretense, no more having to say the right thing. Do you think a little grief is good for us? And wouldn't it be nice if we didn't need grief to be more honest?
That is true. Yeah, but I agree. That would be nice. We didn't need grief, or we didn't need this like horrific, like life altering
Yeah.
event to do it. Right. But yeah, I don't know if we need grief. I wouldn't be so bold to pronounce in that way, but I think it can be different for everyone. But in my experience of grief, right, like if I'm thinking back to the years following my brother's death, maybe not the only thing, but one of the things that my grief did allow me was to be free in a way that most teenagers do not feel free, right? Because I thought, oh, wow, here I thought all these things mattered. I was working so hard to look a certain way and talk a certain way and get certain grades and, all these things that teenagers can really care about, like really small things. What does Rebecca think about me? Like, or does so-and-so like me? Like these middle school concerns vanished from my life. Like none of them mattered the next day. And that was really nice. And that allowed me to, in a weird way, be happier than I think I would have been, or at least less anxious than I would have been. And then as my life went on and I kind of re-entered the world again and started caring about those small things, I did feel my anxiety come back, right? So I think you're onto something, right? Like that there is something at the very, very least, something, if you can see it that way and if you can channel it that way, there can be something a little liberating, right? It frees us from like our kind of pedestrian concerns.
I think that's so true. I had don't want to make this interview about me, but I did have an experience of grief just when I got divorced. And I remember when people asked me how I was, poor person, because I was so honest, right? I wasn't doing well. They were going to get to hear about it. And obviously now I'm, happy again many years later. And I just say, I'm good. There
you
is
start like, hiding. Yeah.
But I'm going to ask you about it later because not everyone does. Sometimes people still try to cover it up. We can talk about that later because I don't think it's healthy. But anyway, so Phoebe comes to the hotel to kill herself. And Lila is the self-obsessed bride who has been planning this huge, expensive wedding for ages and wants it to go smoothly. Phoebe's killing herself will ruin Lila's wedding. Lila begs her not to kill herself. Here's some brief dialogue between the two. Very brief. This is the most important week of my life, the bride pleads. Same, Phoebe says. So that was just like very few words, maybe less than 10 words, and it was so funny. So does your dialogue just come to you? When I read it, to me, it feels like it might be quite easy for you.
It is. Yeah. I mean, it is. I would say when I first started writing, like I was a very dialogue heavy writer. Like that to me seems to be the thing that came to most naturally. Whereas, as I got older, I had to really learn how to write setting or, I had to kind of deliberately and consciously try to learn certain elements of craft, dialogue. And of course I had to like sharpen the dialogue and learn how to write effective dialogue, but it was always the thing that drew me, kind of like the lifeblood of my writing, and the books that I loved were always so dialogue heavy. So, and I love talking. I love conversations. I love long conversations in books and real life. I could talk on the phone for 4 hours, right? So, and I love when people reveal.
The dialogue is really good. And it strikes you. And there's a lot of dialogue. The dialogue is often the most revealing parts of the book. The deepest moments come through the dialogue. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, and sort of what I think, you learn about Phoebe through her interiority as you go along, but I think you do see another side of her that comes out when she's talking to the wedding people, or like when she's talking to Lila, or Gary, right? As the book goes on, right? She really reveals a lot to Gary. And I think it's interesting sort of what people choose to reveal and how they choose to reveal it, right? And what they choose to keep inside, right?
Not very much in Phoebe's case.
Not very much. Not this week. This week, she's laying it all out there.
Yeah, she is. At what point did you realize that Phoebe needed to be a stranger in the story to get the other characters to open up to her.
That was also baked in from the start. And I don't know. I love the stranger's perspective on things. Like I love when the character is kind of watching something from afar. And I think that's because the stranger is able to see something that the characters who are closer to the action miss, so that the reader gets to see something also through the stranger's perspective. I mentioned I work at weddings earlier, and that really comes from my job as a photo booth attendant at weddings while I was in graduate school. I used to just stand next to these photo booths, wedding after wedding after wedding after wedding, dressed like a wedding guest because we didn't have uniforms. So I would like wear a cocktail dress, and people thought I was part of the wedding, and they would come over and like ask like, why do I look so sad? Or why do I look so bored? And they would end up talking to me way longer than I would have thought, because I was like, your whole family's here. Your friends are here. Like, what are you doing talking to this random stranger? But it seemed to be fun for them to have a break from their friends and family, right? Or to to have just a momentary break where they could actually tell some random woman, like, I don't really think the bride is good for the groom, or my dad's a jerk and he's been that way since I was a kid. I felt like as the stranger, I got the real dirt, and no one else at the wedding would, because they have to perform for each other.
So you knew she had to be a stranger because that was your experience. And also I suppose if she's suicidal, she's even more of a stranger because she feels even more apart.
Right. She's in a whole world of just her emotions, right? And everyone else at the wedding is committing to this role for a few days, right? Of like being their best self. And it's like Phoebe has actually committed to the opposite, right? Like, no more pretending to be my best self. No more trying to be my best self. I'm giving up. Like, that's it. And I was really intrigued by that clash, and how perhaps Phoebe's kind of confessional spirit, how that would become contagious, right? How her honesty and frankness would actually start to rub off on these wedding people and like serve as this like very tempting way to be.
It's funny, and again, not about myself, but when I told people I was getting divorced, people would tell me about their unhappy marriages.
Yeah.
They would open up.
You learn, yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've experienced that in so many different ways, right? Like if I tell someone I lost a brother, a lot of times people will say, hey, me too. Or, I lost a sister. Or if I get diagnosed with something and I start talking about it, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, it turns out that person has it, or their cousin has it, or it's just once you start revealing something that maybe you think you shouldn't or can't, it opens up a doorway.
It does
for others.
So maybe this isn't fair because the wedding booth, I can easily see how you would talk to strangers. But I listened to an interview where you said you also like to talk to people on airplanes. And it's a bit like talking to your therapist, only you don't have to pay them because you can say whatever you want. Who cares? Yes. You'll never see that stranger again. And I thought to myself, oh God, so Alice is the type of passenger on a plane that I avoid. And it's like, oh God, is this person going to be talking to me the whole flight? Will I be trapped and unable to, read my book? So I always shut down those conversations. But now that I know it might be you, I'm thinking I should really be more open when people start talking to me. So have you had random conversations? I guess you have at these photo booths, but just in general, where you've sort of bared your soul or parts of it to people you've never seen again? And have the conversations been enlightening to you?
Yeah. I am not always that person on an airplane, though it's funny when I can feel myself wanting to shut down and just stare out the window. And usually when I do that, I don't talk about myself. I just ask the person question. Like if they're talking to me, I'll just respond by asking only questions about them, right? It's like a little less work.
Yeah.
And I usually get sucked in, right? Like the stories are always so unexpected, or I'm like, wait, you were in a cult and you now are flying somewhere to help deprogram a youth, like out of a cult, I mean, after that, I was like, I can't go back to staring out the window.
No.
Uh-huh. And then I leave that conversation thinking, why did I want to shut down instead of have that conversation? Right. Like, I would have been worse off for it if I did. Right. So I am always fighting that impulse. But when I do open up in that way and let something just happen, like I almost never regret it.
Okay.
Yeah. I had another really interesting experience like that I was flying down to Alabama to move out of an ex-boyfriend's apartment and get all my stuff. And I was very sad and I was dreading this whole thing. And we got stuck in Atlanta because of a storm system. And we didn't know how, by we, I just mean me and all the other people in the airport.
Yeah.
And we didn't know how long it was going to be. So everyone went to this bar and it was just packed. And I was sitting at the bar and people were like, what are you going south for? And I was like, I just told the truth.
Yeah.
And someone was like, oh man, she's getting a divorce. Get this woman a whiskey. And I was like, I'm not getting a divorce, but like just moving out. But the guy next to me, he's like, oh, I'm getting a divorce. The third guy. And so the three of us just like had these drinks and we just told each other our life stories. And I remember getting on that second plane so much lighter and feeling like, you know what? It's going to be okay. Like I have the ability to make new connections all the time anywhere.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know why I thought this was going to be the end of connections or the end of my happiness, right? Like, where did I get that idea? So yeah, I think, I really just love those moments and the way that strangers can, they're not going to be in our lives forever, but they just can shift something for us. And that shift can be important.
Yeah, no, that's a very good example. There's a lot of death in this book, although that should not turn readers off. The deaths have already happened before page 1, and they're more in terms of how they shape those left behind. You have Phoebe, who can't conceive a child, which is a kind of death. Phoebe's mother, who died in childbirth. Lila's father, and Gary's wife, Wendy. A lot of people are grieving, but pretending not to be in pain. Can you talk about grief and societal pressure to pretend you are okay when you're not? I mean, we've kind of covered it, but it's like an added element to grief, like makes grief even worse because you can't just grieve. You have to kind of, although it's better if you don't, but a lot of people try to hide it. And I think that's very unhealthy actually. But anyway, what do you think about that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think I suffered from that for a long time. I mean, because I was a teenager when I was grieving and almost no one else I knew was, no one else my age.
Yeah.
So I was like really trying to hide it and carried that through for many years into my 20s. And I was always impressed. I would take note of people who didn't, right? Like people around me, or if I went to a reading or was reading a book, right? And someone just like admitted to their sadness or their grief. And I started paying attention to my own reaction, which wasn't like, ugh, that person. My reaction was, oh, thank you. Or like, I feel now connected to you, right? So I don't know exactly, I think everyone probably has their own reason for why it's a shameful thing to feel sadness or grief. But that was certainly part of my experience. And yeah, like you said, it's like an extra form of grieving on top of the grief, right? Yeah. Managing your grief for other people.
Yeah.
And I really try not to do that anymore, but it's very hard. It's, it's like, where's the line? Like how much can I say? How much can I say? Right.
When did they get sick of that?
Exactly. Yeah. Right. Like I brought it up once. Is 2 times too many? Is 3 times just like annoying? Right. Yeah. So I don't harbor any illusions that I'm going to figure this out, but I do think at least I'm aware of it now. And at least I'm like kinder to myself when I feel something that I think maybe I shouldn't, right? Or at least feel something that I'm hoping I wouldn't feel, right? So I just kind of let myself feel it. I mean, I think that's what writing Phoebe really allowed me to do, is just really think about like how much better it is to actually just admit what it is we're thinking, even if it feels like the worst possible thing you could say.
So, I mean, I know this myself, but writing is very healing for you. But you mentioned something in another interview, which makes me think writing might have something else, where you said that when you used to take creative writing classes, and they would say, figure out all the traits of these different fictional characters, you had a really hard time. But what worked for you was having one thing, only one thing that you knew about a character. And then you could kind of go on from there. And you said in this interview that was the part of writing you liked, was the process of figuring out who that person was, knowing only one thing at the beginning. So writing does a lot for you in a way, but can you talk about that process of knowing one thing? And like Lila, or even Phoebe, I guess we know what her one thing is. She wants to kill herself.
Mm-hmm.
But like, for example, Gary, what was his one thing? The boyfriend or the husband, the fiance, the groom?
The groom. Yeah, I mean, I think that is something that I really love about fiction, when fiction writers take someone who seems sort of like a stereotype and then increasingly complicates that stereotype.
Mm-hmm.
And because I just think that mirrors my experience of knowing people, right? Like if you are meeting a stranger, you're seeing someone across the way at an airport or a wedding, it's like, you don't have that much information to work from. You have, this person in the hotel lobby is still wearing their neck pillow from the airport, right? That's the dominant thing. You make an assumption about their character based on it. And if they walk away and you never see them again, that's all they will be to you, right? But
yeah.
I just love in life when I make this quick judgment about someone. And I love it when it's especially negative, right? Like if I'm like a little judgy and like, I don't know about this person because of X, right? Or like Lila, for instance, right? Like she would be someone I would judge probably pretty harshly upon seeing her. And I've had so many experiences like that where then I get to know that woman and I'm like, you are not at all what I thought you were. In fact, you're the opposite. And I'm the jerk, right? I'm the jerk for, reducing you to this one character trait. So yeah, I really, it's, I don't know. That's just what draws me to the page. And I don't know, with Gary, I think it's, when Phoebe first sees him as the groom, right? The stereotype. Oh, yes. But she sees him like in almost like as a silhouette before that, right? Like when he is the older groom of the younger, beautiful bride, right? Like that's a stereotype, that we see a lot. And she kind of makes judgments based on that and maybe sort of like dismisses him and because of that, right? As like, I know him, right? I know who that guy is. And then when she meets him in the hot tub and she's not seeing him through that lens, right? He's actually this complicated person who seems very tired.
Yeah.
And wants to talk and yet at the same time doesn't want to talk and doesn't match what she assumed, that she doesn't even recognize him as the groom.
Right. And another character who is very annoying, Marla.
Oh, yeah.
At first. I think her name is Marla, the sister. Yes. And how when you get to know her later, much later, and it's just a small part, she also is much deeper and less annoying than she first appears to be. More interesting.
Yes. I mean, I was hoping the reader would think that by the end of the story. I often think it's that same thing that maybe we resist in a person that ends up becoming the thing maybe we love the most about them. Right. So for Marla, she is very precise and very formal in a way that can be quite off-putting to everyone around her, and very task-driven, right? Like they're on the boat celebrating the proposal, or sorry, the wedding party, and she realizes her car registration is expired. It's expired, and so she has to do it right then, right? And this really bothers Gary. He's like, can't you just like have a drink and hang out and then do it later, right? But she must, right? She has to be correct and she has to be right with the law. And so I don't know, like that can be really a hard trait to put up with. And yet at the same time, I think Phoebe comes to enjoy Marla because that ends up being kind of funny, right? Especially when she's trying to like sext with, when Marla's trying to sext with her husband. It's like you take that character and then you try to imagine her like being sexy through text, and Phoebe is charmed, right? And like the fact that Marla's being vulnerable in this moment, even though she's struggling to be casually sexy, right? So I don't know.
I loved her. She was a very small part, but the others had much bigger parts. But that's typical of, or characteristic of what you did with everybody, or a lot of them. Patricia, they all came to be more than a sum of their parts.
Yeah. And with Lila, it's the same thing, right? She's really self-obsessed and like only thinking about her wedding. But I think in the end, that's Phoebe, in a weird way, like admires that, because there's something about being lost in your own grief that makes you feel separate from the world, and like the small things, the small daily things, or like you could look at a party and be like, what a stupid little thing, right? Lila, of course, takes it quite seriously. And I think Phoebe is trying to get her way back to that place, right? Where the small things about where like, let's throw a nice party. It matters, right? Lila does that. And Phoebe is watching this. And I think Lila slowly brings her back to earth by doing so, right? So it's that same thing that's kind of annoying about her. And yet at the same time, it's like, well, then who else is going to throw the party? Like someone has to throw the party and make it nice, right? Yeah. And maybe we don't really think about that person too much as like a connector of people, or like a creator of really nice moments. But they're doing something that lazier people are not doing.
That's an excellent point. I like that a lot. And she cares. She cares about, the coconut pillows, the mattress, I forget what they call, those things were called in between the courses that failed.
Oh, the palate cleanser.
The palate cleanser. Yeah. Right. And so everybody else gets to enjoy these things, and they can tease and make jokes about her. But without Lila doing that, they'd all just be at home.
They'd all just be at home in their separate rooms. Yeah,
exactly. I think part of why I loved your book is how you deal with big life issues like loneliness, life not turning out how you had hoped it would, the betrayal of someone you love, and of course, someone you love dying. You deal with them all with some humor. Can you explain how you think humor helps us in our darkest moments?
Yeah. Humor is one of like the key things that helps me in my darkest moments. And, dark moments that are very different kinds of dark moments, right? Like, because I've already mentioned this, the most profound experience of grieving that I had was losing my brother. And I remember thinking like, I am never going to laugh again. Like, I don't see how anything could be funny. I don't see how as a family we could ever laugh again. I think when we're really in a dark place, we can be very black and white about things and very apocalyptic and think we know exactly what life will look like from this point on. And so humor has been the thing that has most surprised me, right? Because it's like, you don't plan for that, right? It just happens. It's just spontaneous, right? I mean, I remember the first, the day that we found out that he had died, I invited one of my best friends over just to kind of have some company. And we were sort of just struggling in conversation, right? Like, who knows what to say in that moment. And so she said at some point, our other friend, she's really mad at us right now because you didn't invite her.
Oh,
you only invited me. And
oh gosh.
And like yesterday, this would have made me nervous. Like, oh no, someone's mad at me. Right. And the day of, because of what was going on, we just started laughing hysterically, like almost in, a trauma-like way, but it was just so funny.
The ridiculousness.
the absurdity, right?
Yeah.
And that was such a stupid small thing, but I do think it was key and reframing the whole thing it's like, no, look, I wasn't planning on laughing today, but I did. Right. And I couldn't have predicted how I would have laughed, right? So it just opened the door for like you don't know what's coming, and be open to these moments of absurdity when they present themselves, because they do help you, like, even just think differently for 1 second, right? Sometimes that's all you need.
Yeah. What about the most challenging part of writing this book?
I think the most challenging part was pushing myself to consistently be honest throughout the book. I know there were a few parts where I stopped writing for a few months or so, mostly just because I was like, almost similar to the first time I abandoned the project.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I just don't feel like going to that dark place right now, or I don't feel like trying to get into the headspace of someone who is about to take a bunch of cat painkillers and, and
Cat painkillers that smell like tuna.
Really just looking for the comedy in every possible moment. Yeah. And not because I didn't want to write these things. Like, I totally would have had no problem writing them if I knew no one was going to read it. Right. But there was just something about, like, getting back to our earlier conversation about, wanting to hide sadness or wanting to hide grief. I mean, I think writers feel that too, right? That you avoid in your fiction what you tend to avoid in life, right? So I kind of felt like, oh no, if I write this dark character, everyone's going to think I'm her. Or if I display a knowledge of sadness and grief, people are going to think I'm sad, and wanting to be perceived that way.
Yeah.
And so that was something I had to push through and, coach myself through and say, listen to Phoebe. Like, she doesn't care. All she wants is connection, and she wants to be honest and about her life experiences, and so do you, right? And so I found that challenging, but ultimately, like, the most wonderful part of writing this book is now having done that, having talked and written about things I was scared to talk and write about, and now getting to connect with people over it, and actually finding that people are pretty receptive to those kinds of conversations, whereas I had only imagined all the negative things they would say. Yeah.
No, it was good. And it was very well written, all the flashbacks to her marriage and the unable to have a baby. I mean, it was sad. It was sad, but it was good sad. But I was happy when she got to a lighter place for her sake. I was like, please.
Yeah. And I think that's like that was really the question I was having at the time is, how do you move on from things that are never going to feel okay? Right. Like, there are just some things that, if you want to have a baby and you can't, like, that's never going to feel good. That's always going to feel sad. And that's always going to feel like a tragedy. But you do have to figure out a way to live your life and be happy, or as happy as one can be. So that, to me, is just the question of living. It's like, we have to do that over. And I thought we were only going to have to do that once. Like, I thought, as a kid, I was like, well, this was my big tragedy. Like, and I, like, it's done early. So I imagined, like, the rest of my life is like only getting better and happier and no more loss. And I was like, in fact, not at all. Yeah. Like, you're always encountering these things that you can't make better, but you have to live anyway, right? So, so it, for me, writing this book is like getting her to that place, and thinking about all those small little moments that would, like, build up to helping someone move on. Yeah,
I think you succeeded. I feel like the ending, she has survived and she's going to thrive. Like, she's going to be fine, which is a huge accomplishment because it only happened in, I think it was about a week. It was a week-long wedding.
The challenge I set up for myself.
No, you did it.
In 6 days, she will be better. Yeah.
So I read is it going to be turned into a film or a TV series?
Yes, it is being turned into a film, and the screenplay is being written. as we speak. So that's the stage we're at. So really not much else is going on other than just getting that manuscript ready to go.
No casting then.
No casting. Yeah, no casting.
Like, who is going to be?
Everyone wants to talk casting, and that is the fun part of it.
Phoebe will be fun.
Yeah.
Phoebe will be fun. Lila's good too, but you kind of have the pretty blonde.
What do you mean?
I mean, I think that'll be easier to cast Lila than Phoebe.
Oh, right. Yeah. There's a lot to choose from.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Those are all my questions. Alison, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Elena. This was really fun.
I hope you all enjoyed this episode with Alison Espach of The Wedding People. While there are sad chapters, hang in there. The book gets funnier and funnier as Phoebe charms the wedding people with her brutal, refreshing honesty. Next up, we have a totally different read. I'll be speaking with Rufi Thorpe about her wholly original and educational novel, Margot's Got Money Troubles. 20-year-old Margot accidentally gets pregnant by her junior college English professor. Despite everyone's advice, Margot decides to keep the baby. Facing unemployment and eviction, Margot needs some cash quick. That's where the site OnlyFans and her ex-pro wrestler father, Jinx, who doubles as both babysitter and business advisor, come in handy. Who knew OnlyFans and pro wrestling had so much in common? And if that sounds too far out for you, it wasn't too far out for prolific TV creator David Kelly, who is producing the series for Apple TV, starring Elle Fanning, who also narrates the Audible, Michelle Pfeiffer, Nicole Kidman, and Nick Offerman from Park and Recs. So see you soon.